If you've been around the gaming scene on the internet for a while, there's a likely chance you've heard of something in the Pokemon community called a Nuzlocke run. To grossly summarize a Nuzlocke, it's essentially a fan-made challenge where you can only use the first Pokemon you encounter in an area, and if any of your Pokemon faint, it's considered dead, and you can't use it anymore during the playthrough. Now, if you've noticed the title of the video, I'm not playing Pokemon. So you may be wondering, what does this have to do with Monster Hunter? Well, fellow hunter, I'll tell you why. Like a Gobbul's light in the depths of the sea, an idea popped into my head. What if I play Monster Hunter Rise, widely considered to be one of the easier Monster Hunter games, and applied a similar challenge? Thus, I present to you the Monster Hunter Weaponlocke. I guess I'm not saying that Monster Hunter Rise is an easy game, however it provides players with more tools than ever to hunt the big bad beasts. Wire bugs, wirefalls, skill swapping, hunting helpers, and many more options are available to help dispatch the monsters, so I guess I'd say it's easy for a Monster Hunter game. It's also easy to subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, I'm planning on some cool things in the future, so subscribe to stay tuned. After a quick Google search, it's certain that the Weaponlocke isn't something I've coined. However, not a lot of attempts like this kind of run are recorded. So I'm not gonna go around and say that I've invented this run, I just think it sounds fun and different. Let's set the rules out before we go any further. When I start up the game, I have to select one type of weapon that I can use to hunt. I'll be able to craft and use the same category of weapon, but I can't use a different kind of weapon. Now, there is actually a way to change weapons. That would be to feint during a hunt. If I feint during a hunt using a specific weapon, that entire weapon category becomes unavailable to me. With that being said, I'd have to switch weapons in the tent to another available weapon type to finish the quest. Another rule I'm implementing more or less mirrors the other optional Nuzlocke rules. In some Nuzlocke rule sets, the player can choose to not use items during battle. In my case, having 0 items would be a bit rough, therefore I'm going to be restricting myself to only using the items supplied in the supply chest that you can grab for free, as well as items I've gathered during the hunt, and also whetstones. In the case of bowguns and the bow and arrow, I couldn't really come up with an alternate rule without heavily nerfing the things into the ground, so I guess I can bring whatever ammo and coatings I want, however I won't be able to restock in the tent once I run out of ammo. During the run, I've forbidden myself from playing multiplayer or using hunting buddies, i.e. palicos and palamutes. This means it'll just be me and the monster, mano-y-mano. Finally, the run can end in one of two ways. The first being a failure, where I run out of available weapons to use before I reach the final boss. A success happens when I beat the story monster, Primordial Melzino, with at least one weapon type left. With all of that out of the way, let's jump into how my run went. To start things off, I began by creating the brave hunter that would be the star of our show, Meatbag 1. I didn't want to spend too much time in the character creator, but I'd be damned if I didn't want to put some glowing face paint on the poor fool. I then chose my first weapon, the trusty sword and shield. It's a weapon I'm fairly familiar with, but I wouldn't consider it my main, so losing it wouldn't be too disastrous in a worst case scenario. In Monster Hunter Rise, the player can choose to take on what's called village quests, which are easier single player quests that can be considered the tutorial. There are a lot of village quests to go through, but completing the key quests for all of them will let me jump a rank or two ahead in the hub quests, which is where the real progression lies. However, I decided that even if the village quests are easier, the more hunts I do will risk an unnecessary feint. I jumped right into the hub quests, deciding to take the quicker, though arguably slightly riskier path. And with that, I sent out to hunt a low-rank Great Izuchi in the Frost Islands. Great Izuchi is essentially this game's tutorial monster with huge windups for its attacks to help newer players understand how to read a monster's attack tells. This was great for me since I had to unlearn the controls of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which I had been playing non-stop for over a week before attempting this weapon lock. After some derusting of the Monster Hunter Claw, I successfully dispatched the Azuchi without complications. The weapon lock was off to a strong start, but then another thought occurred to me. I can do this faster. So, I took a look at the Sword and Shield upgrade tree to see if I could boost that dinky 50 base power on the default Sword and Shield that was given to me. Not wanting to risk losing a weapon, I also decided to make and upgrade a few pieces of armor. After a little bit of gathering and some small monster quests, I ended up with the Ice Tree Sword and Shield. It didn't have as much power as the other possible upgrades, but it was the safest option to grab without doing a bunch of other hunts. With a cool new sword and board in hands, I decided it was time to take on the next challenger, the Acnosome. Knowing full well that this monster could use elemental attacks in the form of fireballs, I was a little unsure about heading into this hunt. But with a high enough fire resistance granted by the Azuchi armor, Acnosome was little more than a hurdle in my journey. The Kulu-Yaku was the next beast on the docket. A returner from Monster Hunter World, Kulu is known for using rocks, pots, and other treasures that it digs up to defend itself and throw at hunters. Knowing how easily the rock could cause me to become stunned, I made a mental note to avoid it at all costs. After a quick, mostly uneventful hunt of the Kulu-Yaku, the final hunt for rank 1 was the Great Ragi. Great Ragi is the alpha version of the regular Ragi, raptor-like monsters that are capable of spitting clouds of poison that slowly eat away at hunters' health. With that in mind, I did my best to not be poisoned. Though it threatened me with that ability to poison, I remained the unstoppable monster hunting machine and pulled an impressive victory over the Great Ragi. To finish a rank in Monster Hunter Rise, the hunter is required at minimum to complete the designated number of what's known as key quests. There's more hunts than are required, which gives me a little wiggle room to decide which monsters I want to avoid. The urgent quest is then unlocked after completing the key hunts, and successfully finishing the urgent unlocks the next rank. Moving to rank 2 required me to hunt a Tetranodon, which isn't terribly difficult. The Tetranodon has some heavy-hitting attacks, but it was nothing that proved too hard. Tetra is able to consume some unknown substance, which engorges its body and adds some extra power behind its attacks. Once this happens, Tetranodon gets some new moves, such as throwing huge boulders or even causing its previously weak roar to flinch hunters. Though there was the infamous Bubble Snipe of 1986. Oh god, oh god, oh god! He actually hit me! I was not expecting to actually be able to do that. Tetranodon was slain, and Meatbag 1 moved on to rank 2. Rank 2 boasted some significantly stronger monsters, but I wanted to dip my toe in with the Bishaten. The fight brought me to a new locale, the Flooded Forest. Bishaten is quick and nimble when she needs to be. She can float through the air and climb up trees. Despite her wily antics, Tiny Kong's fight was fun, and she couldn't hold a banana to the hunter Meatbag 1. At this point, I unlocked the Meowcenaries and the Argosy, both being ways to gather a few extra materials for crafting, though most of it wouldn't be very useful. As I was looking at the list of key quests, I knew I wanted to avoid two monsters. Basarios, since I don't want to deal with its hard armor all the time, and Volvidon, since I knew I could easily get wombo comboed by paralysis shenanigans. Next up was Pookie Pookie, the venomous bird wyvern also returning from Monster Hunter World, capable of wide-range poison clouds and flight. Thankfully, I was able to avoid most of the poison attacks and make short work of the little Pookie. Rathian was the next hurdle I needed to tackle. I would be lying if I said I wasn't at least a little nervous. The mean green queen resembles a classic fantasy dragon with hard scales and dangerous attacks featuring both venomous tail and blazing fireballs. Thankfully, low rank is fairly forgiving, so despite some pretty close calls, Meatbag 1 remained undefeated. With a boost of confidence, I was presented with my next challenge, the First Rampage. Monster Hunter Rise introduced a new type of hunt called the Rampage, which replaced the classic siege hunts that were often considered a bit of a slog. The Rampage brings a sort of tower defense mode into the game, where the civilians of the village can actually help me against an entire horde of monsters. By defeating waves of monsters, I'll be able to repel their assault and generally end up hunting the big bad at the end. I'm given access to ballista, cannons, hunting gongs, and a variety of other useful installations. As I was preparing for the first Rampage, a realization dawned on me. I can't fail the Rampage after 3 carts. The only way to fail the Rampage is to allow the Horde to breach the final defense point. I had to be extra sure to be careful of my health, since it's easy to lose track of it during the chaos of the Rampage. As I expected, the Rampage was pretty chaotic. My primary goal was to knock out the monsters that specifically attack the gates. However, the Pookies showing up, that quickly turned them into public enemy number 1. Annoyingly, they consistently sniped me from installations while simultaneously poisoning me. I enlisted the help of some of the notable townsfolk, such as Fugan the Elder and Iori the Buddy Handler. After the chaos, I reigned victorious over the Rampage and the final Rathian. And so far, I hadn't taken a single cart in the entire run. Next up would be the Royal Ludroth. Originally seen in Monster Hunter Tri, Ludroth returned with a little bit of an updated moveset and some wide sweeping tail swipes. While I never found myself in much danger during this hunt, I was starting to realize that the damage I was doing didn't really keep up with the monster's HP, so after the hunt I decided to grind out a new sword and shield. After I obtained the Fire Element Benabra SNS, I decided to take on the final hunt of the 2-star quests, the Keizu. Keizu introduces the electric element, but I wasn't too worried since this was low rank. The fight was going well, but then tragedy struck. It's okay, I think we still got some items we can use left. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no, do we lose the sword and shield here? No, 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 no! Let me up. No! We lost the sword and shield. Like a king struck down from his throne, I had to make a split decision on the next weapon to use. I finished the hunt with my head hung low, as I knew that I could no longer use the sword and shield from this point on. Having equipped the great sword as my next weapon, I luckily had enough materials to make a rather great sword in the Pookie tree, which boasted decent attack, green sharpness, and a lot of poison element. I also created some higher defense armor pieces. I knew that I couldn't get away with pure damaging skills when so much was on the line. I was out of the frying pan and into the fire, as the next hunt was Magnamalo itself. The hunt also brought me to a new map, the Volcano. The hunt started immediately with some wyvern rides from Ludroth and Rathian, but it didn't take me long before I realized I might have bitten off more than I could chew. Oh my god. Oh, it's time to retreat. It is fucking time to retreat. Time to retreat. Big issues, big issues. Dude, leave me alone, leave me alone. Oh, no. I think he's running. Okay, that just fucking happened. Though Magnamalo put me under immense stress, I began to get into the swing of the fight and actually started to do really well. I even managed to get a tail cut. I was feeling good about the hunt, but then I let it go to my head, and after a few moments... Ooh, not good, not good. I'll just go ahead and change my equipment. Magnamalo had clipped the wings of the greatsword before it even flew. I was devastated. 2 consecutive hunts, 2 weapons lost already. I hadn't gotten to the point of making a backup weapon yet, so on a whim I chose the switch axe. I simply had to finish this hunt. Then finally, it happened. Through experimentation of a new weapon, insane luck, and a little bit of cheese strats, I felled the purple flaming marshmallow and claimed victory. It was a bittersweet victory, as I had to retire the greatsword forevermore. As my secondary main weapon, it was incredibly hard to let it go. Though I had unlocked 3-star quests, I absolutely needed to backpedal. 3-star boasts some pretty tough monsters like Rathalos and the previously fought Magnamalo. Between not knowing how to use the switch axe and definitely needing to grind out armor spheres, I looked back to the 1- and 2-star quests and began plotting the grind. That next stream, I backtracked all the way to the first hunt with the Great Azuchi to practice the switch axe. Thanks to your help, I was able to get into the hang of it and attempt to battle the Rathian again as well. The fight went incredibly well, actually. With newfound confidence, I challenged the Volvidon, even though I swore earlier not to fight the dastardly fart monster. At this point, I decided to craft a backup weapon in the off chance that I lost the switch axe. After a bit of hemming and hawing, I fell onto the hunting horn. I crafted up one in case, but here was hoping I didn't need it anytime soon. I finally felt ready to tackle the first 3-star quest. Rank 3 features an all-star cast of formidable foes, including many flagship monsters of previous games. I figured the easiest one would be the Anjanath, since the dino lacks flight and isn't particularly fast, although it does pack a bit of a punch. After a brutal fight between the Anjanath and Hunter, I emerged victorious. This fight definitely brought a lot more stress to the table. Not nearly as much as Magnamalo, but going forward I knew these monsters were going to be no joke. The next fight featured the scaly, soggy Somnicanth sporting Clouds of Sleep status. Sleep status in Monster Hunter can be dangerous, since if you're hit while you're in this drowsy state, or even totally asleep, you'll take extra damage. Somnicanth is good at teaching the player the mechanics of the wire bugs, involving a wide, sleeping sleep cloud that can either be avoided by being behind the monster, or hovered over by hanging from a wire bug. This hunt went pretty quickly, thankfully, since Somnicanth can be a dangerous monster. Without skipping a beat, I made my way into the lair of the Rathalos, King of the Skies. Rathalos is the flagship monster for not only Monster Hunter 1, but for the series as a whole. Think of him as the Pikachu of Monster Hunter. Rathalos has always been a force to be reckoned with, especially to newer players, but nothing that ever posed too much of a threat. However, in Monster Hunter Rise, our boy got some of the biggest glow-ups in the series. Ratha has been known for its fierce fireballs and poisonous talons, but new to this series are its fire beam attacks. With the odds stacked against me, I took out to slay the king. Immediately getting to Wyvern Ride the Magnamalo was a huge bump in progress against the monstrous monarch, but the momentum didn't last long. A huge mistake early on led me to getting punished. Grabbing the Rathalos' head with the switch axe's amped mounting technique during an attack. It wasn't long after this mistake that I was forced to give up the switch axe and move on to the next weapon. Thankfully, I had the hunting horn in the back pocket. After much struggling against the Rathalos, I eventually overcame the huge obstacle. With Rathalos painstakingly out of the way, the hunting horn proved to be a much more stable weapon for me, despite the drop in damage. Hunting horn is notorious for providing big buffs not only to the hunter wielding it, but to any party members within range of the damaging Doots. A quick modification to my armor set later, and I was ready to roll into the next monster. This time, I squared off against the Toby Kadachi. Toby debuted in Monster Hunter World, and it remains mostly unchanged outside of a few different attack patterns and a new projectile attack. I won't lie, I was scared of Thunderblight. Despite Toby's speed, I managed a successful hunt, battered, but not beaten. I once again decided that having a backup weapon would be a good idea, because I never know when a situation will arise where I will lose my current weapon. I've been using melee weapons this whole time and decided that pursuing a ranged weapon would be a good mix-up, so I ended up with the bow. This mid-ranged weapon doesn't consume ammo, making it great for this weapon lock. Though it does feature coatings to mix ailments and other effects into its attacks, it's likely to be the most cost-effective ranged weapon for this run. Not only can you fire a non-stop volley of arrows, but the bow also has an arc shot with effects specific to the weapon. For example, one bow can arc shot a healing over time effect, while another might grant a momentary boost to affinity to those who go under the cloud. After some quick material collection excursions, I set my target on the Titan, known only as Goss Harag. Goss resembles some kind of abominable snowman with a face like a Japanese oni. It isn't particularly fast, though it has some of the hardest hitting attacks at this point of the game. Goss can also cover its fists with blades of ice, changing its attack patterns and possibly forcing hunters to adapt to its new moveset. Coupled with its upright stance that makes it harder to hit its head, Goss was one monster I wasn't really looking forward to fighting. I took to the Frost Islands, ready to duke it out with the Menace. We held an epic duel full of intense back and forths. Though it was a tense fight, I dispatched Goss and moved on to the next hunt. With one final hunt in the 3-star rank, I had to weigh my options carefully. After much consideration, I landed on the Nargacuga. Nargacuga is a fast, sneaky monster with some unique mechanics. The Narg can't fall into a pitfall trap unless it's enraged, otherwise it'll simply trample over the pitfall trap and break it. Actually, thankfully, I don't even have to worry about this since it's not a capture quest and I couldn't bring my own traps even if I wanted to, due to the self-imposed rules. The hunt started relatively well, getting the wyvern ride from our friend the Magnamalo once again. Nargacuga easily jumped circles around me as I lugged around the heavy hunting horn. I was especially careful of Nargacuga's biggest attack, a huge downward tail slam that has a high likelihood of stunning me, leaving me open to follow-up attacks. Normally this wouldn't be too big of an issue, but I definitely needed to play it safe for this hunt, so I didn't add to the lost weapons list. This was gonna be tough since Nargacuga is just so fast. Nargacuga was eventually felled, opening up the final and urgent quest of the 3-star hunts. I couldn't remember what the urgent quest was, so it came as a surprise to me to learn that the urgent quest was a rampage quest. This was no ordinary rampage, however. This rampage introduced monsters of another tier of power, the Apex monsters. Apex monsters are a special version of existing monsters with altered abilities, higher strength, and a murderous appetite that only hunters can satisfy. Apex monsties are so strong that they're unaffected by traps completely, and even shake off the wyvern ride state, making them unrideable. When an Apex is on the field, only one figure will remain standing at the end of the battle. Immediately, I noticed this rampage was considerably harder than the first rampage I completed earlier. This rampage featured 3 waves instead of 2, and the hordes of monsters marched forward, unrelenting. Despite this increased difficulty, things were going relatively smooth. But then, I heard a roar echo throughout the base. A stinging ring, coming from an awful thing. An Arzuros charged into the fray, but this was no ordinary Arzuros. This was certainly the Apex. As it roared, the other monsters rallied. The Apex charged the defenders on ballista and cannons, not only destroying the equipment, but the entire wall holding the monsters back. I was scared. This wasn't the time to back down, though. I gripped my weapon tighter and engaged the mob. One by one, the beasts were repelled, but Arzuros remained, wreaking havoc upon the area. It approached the final gate, and with one big swipe of its claws, essentially deleted it from existence. I was sure I had lost. But then, the beast kept running. The quest wasn't over. No, it was far from over. It was only just beginning. Arzuros ran to the second outpost, which I had completely forgotten existed, and the Apex and I began our deadly dance, determined to be the last one standing. I stressfully set up the strategic fortifications before finally engaging. Back and forth we dueled, then another roar. More monsters began to flood the battle scene. After one incredibly close call, the objective had changed. I wasn't trying to win. No, I was trying to survive. After what felt like ages, the Arzuros standing upon a wooden platform, a bamboo bomb rose and detonated. Unceremoniously, the Apex fell. its body limp. I had emerged victorious. No, we had emerged victorious. I couldn't have done this without the help of the villagers, and you directly helped me to learn the weapons I was unfamiliar with. And with that, low rank was complete. I had clawed upward through all the battles, all of the struggles. I became a real hunter, a hunter capable of defending Kamura Village. It's not over yet, however. The journey has just begun. And if you want to join me in this journey, you can follow me on Twitch where I streamed this live as I played. Link in the description. As wild as the low-rank Weaponlocke journey has been, high rank holds much more powerful monsters and challenges. And finally, let's not forget the weapons we lost in this journey. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really had a lot of fun streaming this and turning it into a video for your viewing pleasure. I hope you liked it too, and I hope you stick around for the next exciting installment of Monster Hunter Rise: Weaponlocke.